What if your OCD isn't about germs or checking the stove? OCD will often say things like, what if you're a terrible person and you're capable of terrible things? Or what if you're responsible for something really bad happening? Or what if you secretly want to harm those people? And then last of all, it says, don't you dare tell a soul. If that is you, you are going to love this video. We are going to go deep into explaining all of the different types of OCD subtypes so that you can feel less alone. And I'm also going to introduce to you a new way in which we categorize OCD based on very, very recent research. Hello, my name is Kimberly Quinlan. I am an OCD and anxiety specialist. I am on a mission to equip 10 million people with science-based skills to help treat anxiety and OCD, intrusive thoughts, so that you can suffer less. So let's now move over to talk about the specific OCD subtypes. This is actually a term we use instead of using categories. So just imagine within the umbrella of OCD, there are many different little categories or subtypes or buckets of ways in which it shows up. At the end of the day, the treatment is the same. We use the same methodologies, but often people feel really alone and like they're the only one who's ever experienced that. And sometimes it's really helpful to see that we even have subtypes for your specific type of OCD. So let's get started. The first one here is harm OCD. This is the fear that you will harm someone, that you might do danger to somebody. And as with all of these OCD subtypes, they're usually thoughts that are intrusive, they're unwanted, they cause an incredible degree of distress. Nobody wants these thoughts. So with OCD, again, they get very confused on having this thought. What does that mean? Does it mean I want to do this? Why would I be having those thoughts? That is a typical expression of OCD. The second one is sexual OCD or sexual OCD subtype. In this case, someone might be having intrusive, repetitive, distressing thoughts about bestiality, maybe incestuous thoughts. They're usually very much against the person's values, and they feel like this means that something is wrong with them. The third category is relationship OCD. This is often intrusive, again, repetitive thoughts about your relationship. Do you love them enough? Do you want to stay with them? Are they the right one? Are they the perfect match for me? You might scrutinize your partner and their characteristics and their qualities, trying to figure out if they're the one. The one thread line that a lot of these intrusive thoughts have is they're usually very, very distressing and cause a lot of uncertainty for the person. The fourth category is moral scrupulosity. And this can be either just focused on morals, whether you're being moral enough, pure enough, or it could be around religion. Are you following a religion exactly enough? Did you accidentally have a thought that was against your religion? Did you engage in a behavior against your religion? People get very perfectionistic, have a lot of distress on whether they want to engage in these thoughts and these actions. Again, the same goes for all types of OCD. They're very intrusive and repetitive and very much not aligned with our values. Section number 5 is health anxiety. Now, there isn't their own category of health anxiety, but often people with health anxiety feel that their symptoms are better understood as OCD. There's very much a compulsive behavior being done. They're having a lot of these thoughts intrusively, even though they kind of understand that they don't make a ton of sense. And it causes a lot of distress, a lot of the need for reassurance, Googling, going to the doctor, and so forth. Now we're going to go on to contamination OCD. Hollywood does a really great job of portraying contamination OCD, hand washing, using antibacterials. This was a big upswing during COVID-19, where someone is very afraid of being contaminated by germs or illness and so forth. Then we're moving over to gender or sexual orientation OCD. This specific subtype of OCD is where someone has intrusive thoughts about whether they are a certain sexual orientation. So let's say if you're heterosexual, you might have thoughts, what if I'm gay or what if I'm bi? Often that will also go over into gender. What if I don't feel like I am this right gender? This is different to actually wanting to be a different sexual orientation or wanting to be a different gender. Again, across all lines of OCD, they are intrusive, They are unwanted, they are very distressing, and they do not line up with their values. But they do create an immense degree of shame or uncertainty or guilt. These are very common expressions. People often with sexual orientation or gender obsessions will often feel like they can't talk to anyone in fear that they'll be misunderstood. We're moving now on to existential subtype of OCD. This is where you're not certain on what is real, what the meaning of life is, what's the point of life, what happens after we die. People with existential OCD often will spend a lot of time ruminating or researching philosophical topics to try and get to the bottom and relieve themselves of that uncertainty on what is the meaning of the world or are we even here? Okay, so now let's move over to real event OCD. This is where an event has happened and now you have OCD about how it happened. Do you remember it correctly? You might be obsessing over whether you remember certain details about it. You have a lot of anxiety and uncertainty about that real event. It creates a lot of distress for you. We're now going over to false memory OCD, and often these will overlap. This is where someone may have an intrusive thought about something, or they might have a thought about any event, and then they start to question whether that was real, whether that actually did happen, or whether it was a memory from the past that they had suppressed. They might spend a lot of time ruminating, trying to get that certainty on what actually happened versus what didn't happen, and it can be very distressing. You can start to feel like you're going crazy if you don't have access to how things really were. It can be very, very concerning. Now we're moving over to hyper-responsibility. I often think about hyper-responsibility is like a thread through many of these subtypes. This specific subtype of OCD is where you feel responsible for everything. You have a lot of intrusive thoughts around that it would be your fault if you didn't tell somebody, reassurance seek, confess, change something. Sometimes you might even have hyper-responsibility on, I noticed there was something on the ground. What if because I didn't pick it up, someone might trip over it and that might ruin their day and it might cause them to go to hospital. They feel like they're responsible for everything. We then move over to checking OCD. This is, again, Hollywood has portrayed this very well. This is where you check to make sure that your doors are locked. You check to make sure the stove is off. You check to make sure that you've unplugged the hairdryer. All, again, often from that place of hyper-responsibility that it would be your fault if you didn't go and do those checking behaviors. The next one is not just right OCD. Now, this is less about the intrusive thought as it is an intrusive feeling. Often what will happen is you'll be going about your day and all of a sudden you'll have this feeling that feels like it's not right and you feel like you have to go and change that thing, move that thing, correct that thing until it feels right again. This is a very common type of OCD. Again, one that goes throughout many different subtypes and is one that, again, it's a moving target. What feels right today might not feel right tomorrow. We'll then move to symmetry and ordering OCD. Again, very similar to the more Hollywood versions. This is where you line things up, you order things in certain orders or fashions or behaviors so that you can be relieved of the discomfort that it causes. We're then going to move over to perfectionism OCD. Again, we can often have perfectionism without having OCD, but there are folks who have perfectionism to the degree in which it becomes OCD, where they have to check things, repeat things, order things, and so forth, because they feel like things have to be perfect before they can move on. We'll then move on to somatic obsessions. This is where you have intrusive, repetitive thoughts about a part of your body, a sensation within your body. This is often called sensory motor OCD or hyper-awareness OCD. This is where you maybe say you feel like you can't stop noticing your hand, or you can't stop noticing your blinking or your breathing. Often has something to do with some kind of bodily function. We're now going to move over to postpartum OCD. This is very similar to postpartum depression, which is where the hormones related to pregnancy and delivery are changing so much that we have this sudden onset of OCD. Sometimes parents of both genders can experience it and can either go towards maybe pedophilia obsessions, harm obsessions, perfectionism obsessions, hyper-responsibility obsessions, and very much related to the safety of the baby. Okay, we now move over to visual staring OCD. Now, this is sometimes called Tourettic or visual Tourettic OCD. This is a little bit different. It's kind of like the overlap of OCD and Tourette's, where you can't stop looking at a certain part of somebody's body or a certain part of their face, and you are again, completely distressed by it. You don't want to do this, but you can't really control the fact that your eyes go to the place that you don't want to look at. But in that case, it's very distressing, can cause someone to have a lot of shame, and something that we have had episodes on in the past. So if you're interested in learning more about that, go on over, and we've got some amazing episodes on visual staring OCD. Now we move over to pedophilia OCD. Again, this could have been under the category of sexual obsessions. It also could be under the category of postpartum, but this is an intrusive thought, feeling, sensation, urge, or image around engaging in some kind of act sexually. Now, with this, again, it's very much not in line with their values, their beliefs, what they want to do with their lives. But this thought is repetitive and so distressing and can often make them question who they are and their own intentions. Now, the last one is here, but I did realize as I was making this that I did forget one. So the last one here is meta OCD. But before we discuss that, I also want to discuss one more, which is need to know OCD. Sometimes people don't have any of these. They just feel like they need to know an answer. An example of this might be you might have the intrusive thought like, I need to know what it is on somebody's roof. And you need to know, you can't tolerate that uncertainty, and you feel like you need to go and climb their roof to find out. Or you need to know the answer to something, or you need to know, what kind of toilet that person owns. And then therefore you engage in compulsions that are against your values, only because you don't want to have to tolerate that uncertainty anymore. Now let's get over to meta OCD. This is obsessions about obsessions. This is the fear that you will be stuck worrying and obsessing for the rest of your life. So think about this as like having OCD about having OCD. Sometimes people have meta obsessions in terms of like, what if I never get better? What if I never stop thinking about this? What if I never stop having this distress and this uncertainty? People with meta OCD, again, may have meta OCD, but have another subtype as well. And many people often have what we call whack-a-mole OCD, which is where they whack-a-mole, change from one obsession subtype from one to the other. Now, as I promised, there is a new way in which we understand different OCD subtypes. Now, there has been recent research done out of an Italian research lab, and they created what is called the Obsessive Compulsive Core Dimension Scale. It's the OCD. And what that means is they've found that there are specifically 3 categories in which we can place people with OCD. Now, the reason I share this with you is I think it's pretty interesting and pretty cool, and I'm really, really interested to hear which one you feel like yours go through, because you might have listened to that and thought, yes, I'm definitely that and I'm definitely this. Let's look at now from a different perspective. The folks over in this research lab found that there are 3 categories, the first one being guilt avoidance. That maybe your OCD is all around the fact that you want to avoid the feeling of being guilty. The second is disgust avoidance. You're having intrusive thoughts and you engage in specific compulsions in effort to avoid the feeling of disgust. And the last one is the not just right experiences. We talked about that before, but you engage in compulsive behaviors, both physical and mental, to reduce or remove the not just right feeling. And what we've talked about with those other subtypes is all of those categories can go into one of these 3. Now, what they do talk about here in this research study is that the OCD-CDS helps clinicians better understand the emotional motivations behind the compulsive behaviors, allowing for more targeted and individualized treatment approaches, which I think is pretty cool. I personally love all of the subtypes. I think it helps us build community, makes us feel less alone, but this is another way what we can look at it. So what can you do next? What I would strongly encourage you to do is head over to CBT School. We have a whole toolkit that will talk you through each and every one of these subtypes, will help you to create a start to finish plan so that you can target whatever specific subtypes you have. We have assessment and education modules. We have treatment planning modules. We have mindfulness training, self-compassion. We talk a lot about how to use exposure and response prevention for that specific subtype. And then we talk about relapse prevention and maintenance. Now, if you are a clinician and you want to get a specific treatment plan so that you can help your clients with OCD, I really would encourage you to head over to CBT School and check out the Clinician's OCD Toolkit. I have a comprehensive OCD treatment plan that you can use with a timeline and an outline that you can follow so that you know you hit every one of these stages. These are the specific stages I take my clients through when we are managing their OCD. So head over to CBT School and check that out. I have put my whole heart into these programs, and I hope you love them just as much as the thousands of students that have taken it so far. Now, if you're listening here on YouTube, please do put in the comments what specific subtype you feel that you belong to, and extra bonus points if you wanted to identify which of the 3 categories you think your subtype goes under. Now, as always, thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful for your time. I know how valuable it is. I'm so grateful that you're here with me. It means so much. And of course, head over to cbtschool.com for any information about our resources. I will see you in the next episode.